The slap cracked through the coffee shop like a gunshot. For one frozen second, every cup, every laptop, every whispered business call inside the gilded roster fell into silence. A bright red mark bloomed across Jack Reynolds' cheek just above the old white scar that ran along his jaw. But he did not move. He did not raise a hand. He did not even blink. He simply stood there in his faded flannel shirt, holding his 6-year-old son against his chest, while the billionaire CEO in front of him stared back, still breathing hard from the fury that had made him strike him. Victor Stanton expected him to cower. He expected him to apologize. He expected the tired-looking single father with scuffed boots and a child in butterfly patches to understand his place in the world he believed he owned. But Jack only looked at him with a stillness so deep that the room itself seemed to step backward. Sam's little fingers tightened around his collar. "Daddy," he whispered, trembling. Jack's hand moved gently over his back, slow and steady. The same rhythm he had used years ago to calm soldiers in burning vehicles, wounded men under foreign skies, and now the only person left on earth who could break him. "I've got you, Bug," he said softly. Then he looked at Victor again. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Are you finished?" That was when the first real fear entered Victor Stanton's eyes, though he did not yet understand why. He did not know the man he had slapped was not a minimum-wage nobody, not a weak father, not a harmless stranger he could humiliate in public. He did not know that for 15 years Jack Reynolds had lived in places the government never admitted existed. He did not know that generals spoke his name carefully. He did not know that men who had survived war because of him still lowered their voices when they called him Sergeant Major. And he did not know that the most dangerous thing about him was not what he could do with his hands, but what he was choosing not to do with them. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity, grace, and second chances, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us that quiet strength does not need to shout. Sometimes it simply stands still until the truth makes the whole room silent. Now back to Jack Reynolds. That morning in Austin had begun with sunlight, blueberry muffins, and one small promise. Jack Reynolds had chosen the corner booth at the Gilded Roster because it gave him a clear view of the entrance, the emergency exit, the counter, and the hallway that led to the restrooms. Old habits did not retire just because a man did. He sat with his back near the wall, shoulders relaxed enough for ordinary people not to notice, eyes moving just enough for trained people to understand. He had never truly left the war. To everyone else, he looked like any rugged single father in his early 40s. Weathered face, faded flannel, worn denim, leather boots that had seen rain, dirt, and too many years. But a soldier would have seen more. The way his hands rested lightly near the edge of the table, the faint scar near his jaw, the measured breathing, the calm that was not laziness but readiness. Across from him, Sam Reynolds was destroying a blueberry muffin with the seriousness of a tiny demolition expert. He wore a denim jacket covered in iron-on butterflies, pink sneakers, and mismatched socks because Jack had long ago learned to choose his battles carefully. At 6 years old, Sam was light, bright, and stubborn in the way children become when life has already taken too much from them. His father, Stephen, had died when Sam was 3 after a 2-year fight with leukemia that emptied Jack's savings, his sleep, and the part of him that still believed surviving combat meant he understood pain. He had been Delta Force then, a Tier 1 operator, the kind of man sent into rooms where failure made headlines no one would ever read. He had led men through gunfire, sandstorms, hostage rescues, and black operations that existed only in redacted files. But no battlefield had prepared him for sitting beside Stephen's hospital bed while he grew smaller beneath white sheets and whispered, "Promise me he'll still laugh." So Jack retired. He handed in his papers, packed away medals Sam had never seen, moved to Texas, and built a quiet life around school pickups, park afternoons, grocery lists, bedtime stories, and the sacred work of keeping one little boy's world soft. That morning, Sam had asked for hot chocolate. Jack had said yes because he had gone a full week without a nightmare. He had asked for the big muffin, too, the one with sugar on top. Jack had said yes because sometimes fathers celebrate victories no one else can see. "Daddy," Sam said, cheeks round with muffin. "Can we go to the park after this?" Jack smiled. And when Jack smiled, the hard lines of his face briefly remembered who he had been before war taught him to watch doors. "Only if you finish that muffin without wearing half of it." Sam looked down at the crumbs covering his jacket. "Too late. Then we negotiate." He giggled, and the sound did something to him that no metal ever had. It made the room worth enduring. The gilded roster was crowded with tech founders, lobbyists, influencers, and venture capitalists speaking softly about money loud enough to be admired. Espresso machines hissed behind the counter. Keyboards clicked. Expensive cologne mixed with the warm smell of coffee and pastries. It was the kind of place Jack disliked. Too many exits, too many phones, too many people who assumed price and value were the same thing. But Sam loved the hot chocolate with little chocolate curls on top. So Jack came. Love often means entering rooms you would rather avoid because someone small feels happy there. Then Victor Stanton walked in. He did not enter like a customer. He arrived like a hostile takeover. A white Tom Ford suit, black sunglasses, expensive shoes clicking across polished concrete. 2 assistants orbiting him with tablets and terror in their faces. Behind him moved Bradley Ford, his bodyguard, a huge man in a tailored black suit whose eyes swept the room with military familiarity. Victor was 42, founder and CEO of Helios Technologies, a billion-dollar aerospace manufacturing empire with contracts across private aviation, satellite systems, and defense supply chains. Business magazines called him visionary. Former employees called him merciless. Competitors called him expensive trouble. He called himself unstoppable. That morning, he was in Austin to finalize a classified Department of Defense contract worth more than some countries' annual budgets. And the delay had put him in the kind of mood that made everyone around him speak in shorter sentences. "I don't care what legal said." He snapped into his phone as he pushed through the line. "If they cannot finalize clean language by noon, replace them. I am not losing $3 billion because a senior counsel developed a conscience." A young man in a startup hoodie glanced up as he cut past him. "Excuse me, the line starts back there." Victor lowered his phone just enough to look at him over his sunglasses. "I make more money while blinking than you will make in your entire life. Do not confuse proximity with relevance." The young man flushed and stepped back. A few people stared. Most looked down. Wealth has a way of making cowardice feel like manners, Jack noticed, but said nothing. He had learned long ago that every arrogant person in a room is not necessarily his assignment. His assignment was Sam. His coffee, his promise of the park. Sam, meanwhile, had decided to clean up his own muffin wrapper like a big boy. He slid out of the booth with his mug of hot chocolate in both hands, balancing it carefully, humming a cartoon tune under his breath. Jack tracked his movement without thinking. Sam to Trash Can 12, Fort Clear path mostly. Victor's path intersecting. Speed fast. Eyes on phone. Collision risk immediate. Jack's body reacted before his mind finished the math. "Sam, stop." His voice cut through the cafe, low and commanding. Sam froze halfway, but Victor turned the corner around the pastry display at the same instant, still looking at his phone, and slammed directly into him. The ceramic mug shattered. Hot chocolate splashed across the floor and dotted Victor's pristine white shoes. Sam fell backward hard, landing on the polished concrete with a gasp that turned every cell in Jack's body cold. The cafe stopped. Even the espresso machine seemed to hiss more quietly. Sam sat stunned amid broken ceramic and brown splashes, his eyes wide, his lower lip trembling. Victor looked down, not at the child first, but at his shoes. His face changed, not into concern, into fury. "You disgusting little brat," he snapped. Sam's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. Do you have any idea what these cost?" Victor's voice rose, sharp and ugly enough to turn heads across the room. "Where is your parent? Who lets a child wander around like an animal?" He reached down as if to grab Sam by the arm. He never touched him. Jack was there. No one saw him cross the distance. One moment he was in the booth. The next he stood between Victor and his son. A wall of flannel, scar tissue, and silent authority. He did not shove Victor. He did not shout. He simply placed his body where danger had no permission to pass. "Step back," he said. Victor recoiled half a step, startled by the suddenness of him. For a fraction of a second, some old animal instinct warned him that he was standing too close to something he did not understand. But pride murdered that instinct quickly. He looked him over. Worn shirt, old boots, inexpensive watch, tired face. His calculation was immediate and wrong. Poor, powerless, dismissible. Jack crouched without taking his eyes off him and lifted Sam gently into his arms. Sam buried his face in his shoulder and cried quietly, embarrassed and shaken. His hand cupped the back of his head. "You're okay, Bug. I've got you." Then he stood and faced Victor. "You walked into him because you were staring at your phone. You are going to lower your voice. You are going to apologize to my son. Then you are going to walk away." Victor laughed loud and brittle. "Apologize to him? Yes. Your feral little creature ruined an expensive pair of shoes." Jack's eyes did not change. Shoes can be cleaned. Children remember. That line landed harder than he expected. A man near the counter looked down. A barista stopped wiping the machine. The young tech worker who had been insulted earlier raised his phone slightly. Recording now. Victor saw the shift in the room and hated it. People were watching him, not with admiration, but judgment. "Listen to me," he hissed. "I am Victor Stanton. I own people like you. I buy and sell companies before breakfast. I am in this city to sign a defense contract that would pay for your miserable life 10,000 times over. If you think I am going to stand here and be lectured by some low-rent cowboy with a badly dressed child, you are out of your mind." Sam flinched at the word child, shrinking into Jack's neck. Jack's breathing changed, slower, quieter. "Do not speak about my son again." Victor stepped closer. "Or what?" The room seemed to tighten. Jack did not look angry. That was what made it worse. Angry men warn you. Calm men have already made decisions. "Or you will regret it," he said softly. Victor's face flushed with humiliation. "I'll call child services. I'll tell them you threatened me. I'll have him taken from you before lunch. You people always have something to hide." That was the first moment Jack considered ending the conversation in a way the room would never forget. Not because he had insulted him. That meant nothing. Men had tried to break him in languages Victor could not pronounce, but he had threatened Sam, his son. Stephen's last laugh in this world. The promise he had made over a hospital bed. Jack's heart rate slowed. His focus narrowed. Victor became less a person and more a problem requiring containment. "You're done talking," he said. "Leave." But Victor Stanton had lived too long without consequences. Power had trained him to believe every boundary was an insult. Rage made him reckless. He drew back his hand and slapped him across the face with everything he had. The sound froze the cafe. A milk pitcher slipped from a barista's hand and clattered against tile. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Victor's palm stung. Jack's cheek reddened. Sam whimpered against his collar and Jack did nothing. That stillness broke something in the room. Everyone had expected violence, or at least shouting. But Jack simply stood there, absorbing the insult like a mountain absorbs weather. Victor, still panting, stared at him. For the first time, he noticed that he had barely moved from the impact. He noticed the scar near his jaw. He noticed the cold absence of fear in his eyes. "Are you finished?" he asked. His voice was flat. No drama, no threat, just a question that sounded like the last chance a person gets before a door closes forever. Then the glass doors burst open. Bradley Ford pushed through the crowd, one hand already moving toward the inside of his jacket, his massive frame forcing customers aside. "Sir, step back," he barked. "You," he said to Jack, "put the child down and move away before I put you on the floor." Jack did not move. Bradley took 2 steps closer. Then he saw the scar, then the eyes, then the faint faded outline of a Grim Reaper tattoo visible near Jack's right forearm, where his sleeve had shifted while holding Sam. Bradley stopped so suddenly his polished shoes squeaked against the floor. All the blood left his face. His hand fell away from his jacket. For 8 years, Bradley Ford had carried a memory from Afghanistan that woke him some nights still sweating. Kunar Province, a valley of rock and dust. A ranger team pinned down for 14 hours, low on ammo, no water, 2 men bleeding out, radio calls breaking under static. Bradley had been younger then, loud, strong, certain fear was something weaker men confessed to. By the 13th hour, he had learned better. They were waiting to die when foreshadows moved down the ridge. No headlights, no announcement, no hesitation. Delta. They entered the fight like judgment. 20 minutes later, the valley was quiet except for wounded men breathing. The man who dragged Bradley's medic through open fire, taking 2 rounds to his plates without slowing, had turned once under moonlight. Scar along the jaw, Grim Reaper tattoo, eyes like winter. Command Sergeant Major Jack Reynolds, the ghost of Kandahar. A man whose name was spoken in special operations circles with a mix of gratitude, awe, and terror. And now Bradley was standing 4 feet from him in a coffee shop, having just threatened to put him on the floor. Bradley slowly raised both hands, palms out. Sergeant Major, he whispered, voice cracking. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was you. The cafe went so silent that a spoon settling in a saucer sounded enormous. Victor stared at his bodyguard. Bradley, what are you doing? He did not look at him. His eyes stayed on Jack. Sir, he said, voice low and urgent. You need to apologize right now. Then we need to leave. Apologize? Victor shouted. Have you lost your mind? He threatened me. Bradley finally turned to him, and what he saw in his face made him step back. It was not fear of losing his job. It was pity. No, sir. You threatened his child. Then you struck him in public. You work for me. Not anymore. He removed his earpiece and dropped it onto the floor. Quit. Victor's mouth opened. No sound came. Bradley looked at Jack again. Sergeant Major, I apologize for my approach. I did not recognize you. Jack's eyes rested on him. You were doing your job. Bradley swallowed. No, sir. I was doing his. That sentence crossed the room like a blade. Phones were still up now, recording, capturing not just a confrontation, but a reversal. The billionaire in white losing command of the very man paid to enforce his will. Victor looked around and realized people were no longer afraid of him. They were watching, judging, waiting. His ego panicked before his mind did. This is absurd, he snapped. I don't care what costume soldier fantasy you two share. I am Victor Stanton. I am here to sign a defense contract with the Department of Defense. I have senators who return my calls. I have generals who know my name. I am not going to be humiliated by a washed-up veteran and a cowardly ex-bodyguard. Jack shifted Sam slightly in his arms. Take your win and leave. My win? He laughed wildly. You think this is over? I'll call General McIntyre right now. He handles special operations acquisitions. He'll have local police drag you out of here, and by dinner, your little boy will be in some government office while they investigate whether a violent man should be raising him. Jack's jaw tightened. Bradley said, Victor, don't. But he was already dialing. He put the phone on speaker, holding it up like a weapon. It rang twice. A deep, irritated voice answered. Victor, this had better be about the final documents. Robert, he said, instantly shifting into a polished tone so fake that several customers exchanged disgusted looks. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I've been assaulted in a coffee shop downtown. Some unstable local threatened me after his child destroyed my property. My bodyguard refuses to intervene because he apparently knows the man. I need assistance immediately. There was a pause. Victor, call local law enforcement. I'm in a briefing. He called him Sergeant Major, Victor said, glaring at Jack. Apparently, the man has a scar and some Grim Reaper tattoo. And my bodyguard is acting like he saw the devil. The line went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Victor's expression flickered. Robert. General McIntyre's voice returned, but it had changed completely. The irritation was gone. In its place was caution. Describe him again. I just did. Flannel shirt, scar on his jaw, tattoo, holding some crying child. Another silence. Then McIntyre said very slowly, put him on the phone. Victor blinked. Excuse me? Put him on the phone, Victor. Now. The command in his voice was so sharp that even he obeyed. He held the phone toward Jack. Jack did not take it. He leaned slightly toward the speaker. "McIntyre," he said. "It's Reynolds." On the other end of the line, inside the Pentagon, General Robert McIntyre closed his eyes and lowered his head into one hand. He knew the voice. Every senior officer connected to special operations knew the voice. Jack Reynolds had pulled pilots from impossible valleys, recovered hostages from places no aircraft could officially enter, and saved men whose stars now sat on their shoulders. McIntyre owed him more than respect. He owed him lives. "Jack," the general said, and everyone in the cafe heard the reverence in that single word. "It's been a long time. How's Sam?" Victor's face went pale. The phone trembled in his hand. Jack rubbed Sam's back. "He was having a good morning. Then your contractor walked into him, knocked him to the floor, screamed in his face, threatened to have him taken away, and slapped me when I asked him to apologize." The silence that followed felt endless. McIntyre's voice returned cold. "He slapped you." "He did." Victor rushed in, panicking now. "Robert, wait. He intimidated me. He was aggressive. His child ruined." "Stop talking." McIntyre snapped. The force of it made Victor flinch. "You are standing in front of a man who gave more to this country than your entire boardroom could understand if I briefed you for a week. The fact that you struck him and are still standing is not evidence of your power. It is evidence of his restraint." Victor's lips parted. "Robert, the contract, there is no contract." The words fell cleanly. Effective immediately, Helios Technologies is suspended from all Department of Defense acquisition discussions pending review. Victor staggered as if he had struck him back. "You can't do that." "I can, and I just did. My board will sue." "Your board will be too busy answering questions from federal auditors. If your judgment allows you to physically assault a decorated veteran while threatening his child in a public cafe, I have concerns about your judgment handling classified aerospace systems. Robert, do not call me again unless your legal counsel is present." His voice softened only when he addressed Jack. "Jack, I'm sorry. Truly, give Sam my best." Jack nodded once, though the general could not see it. "Take care, Robert." The call ended. Victor stood in the middle of the cafe, phone still raised, his face stripped of color. In less than 2 minutes, the foundation of his empire had cracked in front of baristas, venture capitalists, students, influencers, and one little boy with tear-streaked cheeks. The room was silent again, but this silence was different. It was not shock now. It was consequence. A slow moral stillness, the kind that fills a room when arrogance finally meets the wall it always believed was a door. Then came the police lights. Red and blue flashed across the front windows. 2 Austin police officers entered, hands near their belts, eyes moving over the crowd. The older one, Officer Miller, took in the shattered mug, the spilled hot chocolate, the tense customers, the billionaire trembling with rage, and the father holding a child with a visible handprint on his face. "We got a call about a disturbance," Miller said. Victor lunged toward them as if salvation had arrived in uniform. "Officers, thank God. Arrest that man. He threatened me. He assaulted me. His child attacked me and my own bodyguard has lost his mind." Miller looked at Jack, then Sam, then the mark on Jack's face. Before Jack could answer, the young tech worker Victor had insulted earlier stood up. His voice shook, but he did not sit back down. "Officer, he's lying." Victor spun on him. "You little." "I recorded the whole thing," he continued, holding up his phone. "He cut the line, insulted people, ran into the little boy, screamed at him, threatened the father and slapped him. I have it all." A man near the counter stood too. "So do I?" "Me too," said someone from the back. "3 angles," another man added. The kid did nothing. For the first time that morning, Victor Stanton had no room to rewrite reality. Officer Miller sighed with the weary expression of a man who had seen too many powerful people expect laws to bend around their shoes. "Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back." Victor recoiled. "Absolutely not. Do you know who I am? I know you are being placed under arrest for assault. I will have your badge. You can discuss that downtown." The handcuffs clicked around his wrists. That sound changed the room more than McIntyre's call had. The call had wounded his empire. The cuffs touched his body. Victor began shouting then, all control gone. He threatened lawsuits, careers, city officials, governors, judges. No one moved to help him. Bradley stood aside, face grim. The baristas watched. The customers recorded. Jack turned Sam slightly away so he would not see the worst of it. When the officers led Victor toward the door, he looked back once at Jack with hatred and fear tangled together. He did not return either. He did not gloat. He did not smile. Revenge was not what had brought him across the cafe. Love had. That was all. As the doors closed behind him, the noise of the cafe did not come back immediately. People seemed unsure what sound belonged after something like that. A barista approached with shaking hands. "Sir, I'm so sorry. We can replace the hot chocolate and the mug." And whatever he said, Jack shook his head gently. "It's all right." "No," the barista said, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "It wasn't." Jack looked at her, then nodded once. "No, it wasn't." Sam lifted his head from his shoulder. His eyes were red. "Daddy, I dropped the cup." That almost broke him. Not the slap, not the threats, not the memories stirred by Bradley's recognition. That small apology from a child who thought broken ceramic mattered more than his own fear. Jack kissed his forehead. "Cups can be replaced, Bug." He was mad. "Yes. Because of me?" "No." Jack's voice softened into something the entire cafe could feel. "Because some people carry storms inside them and blame whoever gets wet." Sam thought about that. "Do we still get the park?" A small, astonished laugh moved through the crowd. Jack smiled real and warm. "We still get the park and ice cream. Now you're negotiating like a professional with sprinkles." "All the sprinkles." Bradley stepped closer slowly, respectfully. "Sergeant Major." Jack looked at him. Bradley, the big man, seemed smaller now, not in weakness but humility. "Cuner," he said quietly, "you got Martinez out. Our medic. He has 3 kids now." Jack's eyes softened almost imperceptibly. "Good. He talks about you every year on the day." Jack looked away. The past was a country he did not visit with tourists. "Take care of yourself," he said. Bradley nodded, understanding the dismissal. Then, after a moment, he looked at Sam. "Your dad is a good man." Sam sniffled and rested his cheek against Jack's shoulder. "I know." That answer made the whole cafe quiet again, but gently this time. Jack carried him past the tables. As he reached the door, the young tech worker stepped forward awkwardly. "Sir, I'm sorry I didn't say something earlier." Jack paused. "You said something when it mattered." The young man nodded, ashamed and relieved at once. Outside, Austin sunlight spilled across the sidewalk, warm and golden after the cold violence of the cafe. Jack stepped into it with Sam in his arms, leaving behind the broken mug, the spilled chocolate, the phones, the whispers, the empire beginning to shake. He did not look back, but consequences do not end when a man walks away from them. By noon, the video had spread across social media. At first, the headline writers used the simple language of outrage. "Billionaire CEO slaps single father in Austin cafe." Then veterans began identifying Jack, not with classified details, not with stories that could not be told, but with enough reverence to change the tone of the conversation. Retired Ranger recognizes Delta legend. Former operator remains calm, while CEO threatens child. Defense contractor loses Pentagon deal after public assault. By late afternoon, Helios Technologies stock had fallen hard enough to trigger emergency calls. Board members who had tolerated Victor's cruelty when it produced revenue suddenly discovered moral concern when it threatened market value. Federal auditors announced a review. The Department of Defense confirmed all pending Helios acquisition discussions were paused. Victor's attorneys issued a statement about a stressful misunderstanding. The internet replayed the slap 10 million times and did not misunderstand anything. Jack learned most of this from Bradley, who called once, not to gossip, but to warn him that reporters had begun gathering outside the cafe and searching public records. Jack's first instinct was to disappear. Old training, protect the perimeter, control exposure, keep Sam away from cameras. But that evening, while Sam drew butterflies at the kitchen table in their small rental house, Jack stood at the sink washing dishes and realized something that felt almost heavier than combat. Sam had watched a powerful adult hurt someone and lie about it. He had also watched strangers stand up, a bodyguard tell the truth, a general defend honor, and his father refuse violence when violence would have been easy. That lesson mattered. Not the headlines, not the contracts. The lesson. "Daddy," Sam called from the table. "Was that man bad?" Jack dried his hands slowly. He turned and leaned against the counter. Stephen would have known what to say. Stephen had been better with the soft truths. Jack had spent too many years in hard ones. "He did a bad thing," he said. Sam frowned. "But is he bad?" Jack sat across from him. "I don't know, Bug. Sometimes people build a life where nobody tells them no. Then the first time someone does, the ugly comes out." Sam colored a butterfly wing purple. "Do you think he's sorry?" Jack thought of Victor's face as the cuffs went on. He had seen fear, rage, humiliation. Not sorrow. Not yet. "I hope he becomes sorry," he said. "That's different." Sam nodded, accepting this with the quiet seriousness children give to things adults make complicated. "You didn't hit him back?" "No." "Were you scared?" Jack smiled faintly. "Not of him." "Then why not?" He looked at his hands. Hands trained to break. Hands now used for lunchboxes, ponytails, dishes, and holding a child steady after a cruel world knocked him down. "Because being strong doesn't mean doing everything you can do," he said. "Sometimes it means choosing what not to do." Sam considered that, like not eating all the sprinkles at once. Jack laughed exactly like that. He smiled. And for Jack, the day became survivable. 3 days later, Jack received a letter. Not an email, not a statement through lawyers, a handwritten letter on thick cream paper delivered by courier and left on his porch. He almost threw it away when he saw the name Victor Stanton. But Sam was at school. The house was quiet, and something in him believed that avoiding the letter gave it more power than opening it. So he sat at the kitchen table and read. The letter was not elegant, not polished, not written by a communications team. There were crossed-out sentences, places where the pen had pressed too hard. Victor wrote that he had spent 2 nights watching the video without sound because he could not bear to hear himself. He wrote that he had built Helios after his father told him he wasn't strong enough to hold a defense firm together, and somewhere along the way he had mistaken cruelty for strength because cruelty got results faster. He wrote that none of it excused what he had done. He did not ask him to defend him. He did not ask him to stop the charges. He did not ask to meet Sam. He wrote only one sentence near the end that made Jack stop. "I saw your son apologize for a cup I broke inside him, and I understood that I had become someone children fear." Jack folded the letter and sat with it for a long time. "Sergeant Major." He stopped but did not turn at first. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said. Jack turned then. "No one does." His eyes filled, but he held himself together. "Will he be all right?" Jack looked toward the street where Sam waited with Bradley's wife, eating a granola bar and swinging his legs. "He has questions." Victor nodded, pain crossing his face. "Children should not have to." "No," Jack said, "they shouldn't." Victor took a breath. "I resigned this morning." Jack studied him from Helios, from the CEO position. "The board would have removed me anyway, but I wanted to sign it myself." For a moment, the man who had claimed to own people stood on the courthouse steps with nothing to command. "What will you do?" Jack asked. He looked down. "Learn how not to be obeyed." It was the first honest thing he had said to him that did not sound prepared. Jack nodded once. Not forgiveness, not friendship. Acknowledgement. Sometimes that is the first mercy truth allows. Months later, people still told the story as if it were about instant karma. They liked the slap, the bodyguard freezing, the general's phone call, the billionaire in handcuffs. Those parts were easy to repeat. They had shape. They had drama. They gave strangers the satisfying rhythm of pride meeting consequence. But Jack never told it that way. When Sam asked about that morning, he talked about the park afterward, the ice cream with too many sprinkles, and how the young man in the cafe had stood up when telling the truth was still scary. Bradley visited once with Martinez, the medic Jack had saved years before, now walking with a cane and carrying photographs of his 3 children. Sam made them all sit on the floor and judge a butterfly drawing contest. Jack watched two veterans laugh with his son under paper wings taped to the wall, and he thought again of Stephen's last request. Promise me he'll still laugh. He did. Not every day, not without shadows, but he laughed. As for Victor, he vanished from headlines after donating a large portion of his severance to veteran family services and child trauma programs. Some said it was image repair. Maybe some of it was. People rarely become pure overnight. Grace is not a magic trick. But once, 6 months after the cafe, Jack received a small package with no return address. Inside was a ceramic mug painted with blue butterflies, clearly chosen by someone who had spent too long deciding whether sending it was appropriate. There was no long letter, just a card with 7 words. Cups can be replaced. Childhood cannot. Jack showed it to Sam. He ran one finger over the painted butterfly and said, "He learned." Jack looked at the little mug, then out the kitchen window where afternoon light touched the fence. Maybe he started. Sam nodded. Starting is good. Jack smiled. Yeah, bug. Starting is good. That evening, they took the mug to the park filled with hot chocolate from home because Sam said cafe hot chocolate was now too dramatic. They sat on a bench beneath oak trees while the Texas sky turned gold. Sam leaned against his side, safe and warm, his feet swinging above the grass. Jack's cheek had healed. The video had faded. The world had moved on to newer outrage. But inside him, something quiet had settled. He had spent much of his life believing strength was measured by missions completed, enemies stopped, men brought home alive. Later, he believed strength was surviving grief without letting it swallow his son's childhood. But that morning in the cafe taught him another kind of strength. The strength to stand between cruelty and innocence without becoming cruel. The strength to absorb humiliation without passing it down. The strength to let the room see the truth and trust that truth, when given enough silence, can defend itself. Sam looked up at him. He looked up at chocolate on his upper lip. Daddy. Yeah. If someone is mean again, will you still not hit them? Jack wiped his lip with a napkin. I'll always protect you, but will you be quiet? He looked across the park where children ran through the last light of day and parents called them back from the edge of the path. If quiet is enough, he said. And if it's not, Jack kissed the top of his head. Then I'll still be your dad first. He accepted that completely and returned to his hot chocolate. Jack put an arm around him and watched the sun lower behind the trees. Dignity, he had learned, is not weakness dressed politely. It is power under control. It is the hand that does not strike back because a child is watching. It is the father who refuses to let another person's ugliness decide what kind of man he becomes. And grace is what remains after the noise fades, after the cameras leave, after the world stops cheering for punishment and starts listening for what can still be healed. That morning, a billionaire thought he had slapped a nobody. Instead, he struck a mirror. And in the silence that followed, everyone in that cafe saw exactly who they were. In life, true strength is not measured by how much power you hold or how loudly you can assert yourself, but by how gracefully you handle the unexpected storms around you. Jack Reynolds, a father and former Delta Force operative, teaches us that courage is often quiet, shown in restraint rather than retaliation. When faced with cruelty, he could have unleashed the full force of his past. Yet he chose patience, calm, and protection for what mattered most, his son's innocence. This story reminds us that dignity is not weakness, and grace is not about forgetting injustice, but about choosing what matters over what hurts. We learn that standing firm in our values, even in the face of humiliation, sends a louder message than aggression never could. Every day we encounter small cafes of life, moments when patience, love, and quiet courage are tested. How we respond shapes not only our own character, but also the example we set for those who look up to us. Take a moment today to reflect. When life tests you, will you choose reaction or restraint? Share your thoughts in the comments below about a moment when quiet strength made all the difference. And if this story inspired you, hit subscribe to explore more powerful lessons that teach us how to live with integrity, compassion, and courage.